Hey there, thanks for tuning in. And I'm here with Fernando Raul from fernandorolastrology.com. And we are just continuing our series from the introduction part that we did last week. And today we are going to start with the Venus rising signs, which is Taurus and Libra, in terms of how to implement Sect in terms of Yoga Karaka. So the introduction session was very extensive and very detailed. So we hope that it made so many things clear, and we are moving ahead with this video. So thanks so much, Fernando, for joining in, and it's a pleasure talking to you as always.
Thank you, Ashwin. The pleasure is also mine. So let's go right to it, right?
Yeah, sure. And would you like to just talk about your YouTube channel for a minute or something?
Sure. Do you want to talk about my YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I have a YouTube channel called Fernando Raul Astrology where I upload Yotish material. I'm doing everything, right? But I'm doing it in Spanish language. I'm doing positions, I'm doing planet by sign, planet by houses, everything, but in Spanish because there's not a lot of good material in Spanish about Yotish. But I'm also doing some English interviews, and I'm also doing English interviews in other channels like yourself. So yeah, if people want to see my things, they can go over to my channel, Fernando Raul Astrology. I have a couple of English videos, so you can look those up if you're interested.
Sure, and Fernando is also a major contributor to Celestial Veg magazine. So he's also a writer,
Major.
not just a YouTuber. He's also a wonderful writer. So we'll just take through this what we have now with the Venus rising signs.
Oh, definitely. And like you've said, I strongly recommend people to watch the first part so they're not lost. Specifically, people who are not familiar with Hellenistic astrology, they won't know what Sect is, and people who are not related to Jyotish, probably they won't know what Yoga Karakas are. And the first video explains that thoroughly, hopefully, I hope.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
So do you want me to share the document already to start?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it. I'm going to share and Microsoft Word and rock and roll. So, can you see the document, Ashwin?
Yeah, it's visible.
Let me put it. Why can't I just? Well, let's do it the old way. So let me put it a little bit bigger so people can see it in a better way. Okay, perfect. So here we're gonna start today discussing in this video the first Yoga Karaka Lagna pairs, which are gonna be the Lagnas of Venus, which would be Taurus Lagna and Libra Lagna. For that Lagna, always the Yoga Karaka is
Saturn.
Exactly. So we're gonna be seeing how Saturn is gonna behave according to both Lagnas and according to both day birth and night births according to each Lagna. Okay, so we're gonna start first with the first Lagna in line, which would be Taurus Lagna. And just to start off, oh, Dios mío, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, here, Taurus Lagna. First of all, the Lagna Lord, which we're going to be discussing this here, the Lagna Lord is a Venus, right? Which rules the first and the sixth, and the first and the sixth, and it's part of the ninth sect. But this is something very interesting about Taurus Lagna that usually does not happen with any other Lagna, is that Venus, according to Parashara, is both the Lagna Lord and a functional malefic. So we're going to see that this is going to be interesting for this Lagna because sometimes Taurus Lagna people, they can be their own worst enemy. Exactly. Because they rule the sixth, and the sixth is Libra, and Libra is the Mula Tricona. So it's the strongest of the two signs. Although some people say that it gets neutralized. But yeah. So Venus is going to be interesting because we're going to see that Rash Yogas not only depend on combinations of Trikonas and Kendras, which in this case would be the Yoga Karaka by position, but it also depends on the status of the Lagna Lord, right? If you have a good Raj Yoga, you might enjoy that Raj Yoga. Greatness might come to you. But if the Lagna Lord is not well disposed, that enjoyment, that greatness, it's not going to be fully enjoyed, or there's going to be other hindrances to the Jataka in addition to that greatness, okay? So that's very interesting factor that we're going to discuss. Next, we have the functional malefics, which would be the moon, which rules the third, which is the ninth sect lord, and Jupiter, which rules the 8th and the 11th, and he's part of the day sect. And Jupiter here is going to be the worst Trishadaya lord. Why? Because he rules the 11th, and he also rules the 8th. So the 8th can, as you know, add a wild card factor that, you know, the 8th is very interesting. The 8th lord, as I've seen, is very interesting because although he's an impressionable house, he can wreak havoc if he's associated with functional malefics.
Yeah.
And not in terms of maleficence, but in terms of bringing havoc to greatness or greatness opportunities. Next, we move on to functional benefics for Taurus Lagna, which would be Mercury, Sun, and Saturn. Mercury rules the 2nd and the 5th. He's a neutral. And as I've discussed in the first video, we're not going to be touching upon Mercury because Mercury has a lot of variables that, you know, hinder an appropriate formal analysis or general analysis. The Sun, which rules the 4th, which is very interesting because he is an enemy of Venus, but he's a functional benefic here. And he's the day sect lord. And Saturn, which is the famous Yoga Karaka, 9th and 10th. A beautiful planet for Taurus. They sect Yoga Karaka, and finally the neutral planet would be Mars, which rules the 7th and the 12th. 12th being an impressionable house, and 7 being a Maraca house, which is the house that can cause death. But that's another topic for another video. So let's just start off with the idea that in theory, Yoga Karaka Saturn will do better in day birth by producing less disruptive Raja Yogas than during night births, where he will produce more disruptive Raja Yogas. This is very simple. Day sect Yoga Karaka will do better in day births. Simple. Day birth Yoga Karaka will do worse in night births. And this will be expressed through less disruptive Raja Yoga during the day births and more disruptive Raja Yogas during the night. And we're going to see how this is going to express according to each time of birth, okay? However, and I'm continue reading, Lagna Lord Venus, also a functional malefic per this particular Lagna, is weak during the day. So although Raja Yogas could be enjoyed, there are possibilities of other factors hindering the individual. So we're going to see that even though during the day, Saturn is going to produce more auspicious, less disruptive Raja Yogas, at the same time, Venus is going to be in a not a negative dignity, but he's going to be hindered by the fact that he's not part of the same sect. So we start seeing here something that we're going to see in a lot of, we're going to see that actually in all Lagnas except in one, which is going to be Cancer, that the Lagna Lord is always different in sect to the Yoga Karaka. Venus, Saturn for Taurus and Libra, Saturn for Saturn Lagnas for Venus in Saturn Lagnas and Venus, which would be the opposite, right? And Sun and Mars with Leo Lagna, and the only one that results in the same sect between Lagna Lord and Yoga Karaka is going to be Cancer. But very, very interesting. Cancer is the only Yoga Karaka Lagna where the Yoga Karaka gets debilitated in Lagna, which is kind of interesting. You know, we're going to see that these principles, there are like safety guards, like counterbalances that do not impede a perfect Raja Yoga, never. So, except for the Cancer Lagna, which is very interesting, which we're going to be discussing in another video. So, here we see the principle, right? Saturn is going to do good by day, and it's going to do bad by night. But at the same time, Venus is going to do good by night and bad by day. So we have some neutrality there for like a perfect Raja Yoga. So let's continue, and let's first discuss a Taurus Lagna day birth. So we've divided here the planets by sect. So number one, day birth for Taurus Lagna. Day sect. Obviously, day sect planets are Jupiter, Saturn, and the Sun as sect lord. And night sect planets are Moon, Mars, and Venus, Moon being sect lord. So let's start first with this. In day sect, for a day birth Taurus Lagna, during a day birth, Jupiter is a functional malefic because he rules the 8th and the 11th, and that is going to be introduced into a more active natural benefic, right? Because during a day birth, Jupiter is the best benefic. So Jupiter is a functional malefic that is a more active natural benefic. At the same time, Saturn, during a day birth, is the Yoga Karaka. He's always the Yoga Karaka. And by being the Yoga Karaka during the day birth, he is a less disruptive natural malefic. However, during the day, night sect planets are going to be less dignified. So here we can see the following. During a day birth for Taurus Lagna, Venus, a functional malefic, is a less active natural benefic, who's also Lagna Lord. That's why we have the double L there. And Mars, a neutral, who rules the 7 and the 12, is a more disruptive natural malefic, but he's going to have a more neutral role. And since he rules Amaraka, that has to do more with timing of death, okay? Which has nothing to do with Raj Yogas that we're discussing right now.
Jupiter as a day planet really, for Taurus rising, Jupiter as a day planet really turns out to be a
disruptive force.
Yeah, it is like a even more destructive force, but during night birth, it can actually function as a natural Jupiter's beneficence. You might not see the raw maleficence of Jupiter when it is placed in the night sect for Taurus rising. I can personally kind of attest to that fact, and especially the Venus in a good position for Taurus rising natives as the first lord and sixth lord. The native becomes his own enemy, and in my case, I never had enemies, and only I have put hurdles to myself. So,
then you have to change your chart to a tropical one.
Yeah, maybe we should see that. Yeah.
So I also wanted to say something, that there's a myth in Jyotish that people say that Venus Lagnas are the best Lagnas because Jupiter is the worst natural malefic, especially in Taurus. However, in Libra, he's also a natural malefic, but the Sun is the strongest Trisha Dialord, and that's false. You know, there's no such thing as a better Lagna than others. You know, there's no such thing as a better planet than another, and there's no such thing as a better sign than other, or a better nakshatra than another.
Yeah,
it's just
sure.
False.
And
because,
Sun.
Yes.
Yeah, please go on.
No, continue. The Sun.
No, I was just saying that Taurus rising natives have a unique thing that where both Sun and Saturn become benefics, and even though Sun is not a friendly planet to the like Lagna Lord Venus, Sun tends to become a natural benefic, functional benefic for Taurus rising because it rules an angle which is the fourth house.
Yeah.
So when you have especially for this rising, Sun can actually perform well when it is placed in hidden houses as well, like 6, 8, or 12, based upon the sect it is placed. So that is one kind of unique thing that you can find for the Taurus rising natives.
And not only that, as you mentioned, you know, Sun and Saturn are the worst enemies, but they contribute to Raja Yogas for the Taurus Lagna. So what we can conclude by that is that greatness, if conditioned by the Sambandha relationship between Sun and Saturn, is there, greatness is going to be achieved through friction. Greatness is going to be achieved by contradiction, by frustration, which is very interesting. We can analyze this from a psychological point of view, but the rules of the game are set there. So yes, Raja Yoga can be done by Saturn and Sun Sambandha relationship, be conjunction, mutual aspect, Parivartana, or even Trikona or Kendra Sambandha. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing because people have to realize Raj Yogas have to do with greatness. Raj, king, yoga, union, the union to become a king. It doesn't have to do with health. It doesn't have to do with the Lagna Lord has to do with health. That's why I'm using it here. It doesn't have to do with the good things in life or the bad things in life. It means that you, Ashwin, or me, Fernando, we're gonna get to a position of power, of dominance, of influence, of inspiration, and that's it. You can get there and be sick, like for example. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had polio and he became the most powerful man during the Second World War. I mean, we can also talk about other examples. J. Edgar Hoover has, I was going to use that chart. Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover was probably one of the most powerful men in the United States, but he had a psychological thing where he was kind of a gay man, but he never accepted it. He was a homosexual. He cross-dressed, but he kind of never accepted that. So he was in a position of greatness, but there was conflict inside of him. So there are a lot of cases like that. I mean, great men are very polyvalent and have, the personal life of a great man has nothing to do with his greatness in many ways, or his health by that matter. So yeah, people have to remember that. Raja Yogas is about greatness. So let's continue over here, and that was a great contribution by yourself. So let's first start about what happens with the functional maleficence from the 11th Lord Jupiter during a day birth, which is going to be strong because he's going to be a more active natural benefic, because during the day he becomes the best natural benefic. But in this case, he's a functional malefic. So how is this going to be expressed? Simple. And here's where the tricky parts come in. In theory, a Taurus Lagna person born during the day will get more random positive opportunities or pleasurable problems from Jupiterian things. The person might also be willing to follow. Why is this? Because he rules the 8th, which would be more random positive opportunities or pleasurable problems, because it's Jupiter and the 8th. And at the same time, he rules the 11th, which is the worst one. What detracts us from greatness? Our goals, our aspirations, what we think is the best thing for us. Our friends, our circle of friends that tells, you got to go to a school and study 7 years. Or in another case, you shouldn't go to schools. It's very polyvalent. There's no such thing as a uniform formula. But in a way, since he rules the 11th, he's the Taurus Lagna person during the day birth is going to follow more Jupiterian goals, more Jupiterian aspirations that might detract him from greatness. So examples, as the 8th Lord Jupiter during a day birth will strongly pleasant result from wills, testaments, money from other people, deep esoteric knowledge from a Jupiterian standpoint. So maybe this would be esoteric knowledge that comes from dogmatic religion, some type of official mysticism, that sort of things. Wills, money from other people, which would be probably the biggest thing here, since it's the 8th, right? So, you want to do great things, but you inherit a lot of money. You inherit a business. Then you're not going to do any great things because you have that money. You want to do great things, but you're distracted by esoteric things, the occult, in a very Jupiterian way that might bring you money in, okay? And the 11th Lord, Jupiter, strongly pleasant pursuits for goals involving money, spirituality, or academics. I want to do great things, but I want to make money so I can be rich and have pleasurable things. It can also express itself through wanting to party, right? That's the lesser aspect of Jupiter. Jupiter is all about celebration, about partying, about pomp, about parades and celebrations and all that, and that can be expressed through the pursuit of partying in many ways. At the same time, pursuing spirituality or academics, I want to do great things, but I feel I have to get these degrees in these high universities of prestige. I feel I need to study religious precepts in order to be a spiritual guru, that sort of thing. So that's what's going to detract a person during a Taurus Lagna day birth, okay, and in a strong way. So we can see that the detractions here, and we're going to see it also in Libra, come from very Jupiterian things, but they do bring obstacles toward greatness. The second point we're going to analyze is Lagna Lord status Venus, which will be weak in a day birth because he's not part of the sect of day. So at the same time, during a day birth, the person will be his or her own worst enemy, since Venusian topics inherent to the person will impede the Jataka's body, okay? Since he rules the sixth, and this is very interesting, he becomes a functional malefic, as we explained before. So an example, first and sixth Lord Venus, inability to recuperate from sickness or obstacles that might bring bodily harm or that might impede us from getting what we need. This could be produced also by our partners. This is hindrance to the body, but not towards greatness. So, however, we might get greatness in a Taurus Lagna during a day birth, but Venus is going to have this principle of sect. He's going to be a less active natural benefic. So how does that express being the first and the sixth Lord? Then, you know, Venus is about recuperating, about getting what we need, what satisfies us. In a way, he also rules regeneration of the tissues. So this might be difficult overcoming sickness, difficult overcoming obstacles pertaining to sixth house matters like debt or enemies. It can also represent, you know, partners, since Venus is the Karaka for wife, and also interpersonal relationships that might also apply to women. So this will hindrance, this is a hindrance towards the body for enjoyment of the greatness. So a person might be great, but these things during a day birth might come into play. And the third and final point for this Lagna is Yoga Karaka Saturn, which is the most important player for this analysis, right? Mm-hmm. We've seen that the Trishadaya Lord is going to be strong, the Lagna Lord is going to be weak, and the Yoga Karaka Saturn is going to be strong. So, in theory, no, this is a Taurus. Oh my God. Typo. Sorry. Cool. There we go. In theory, a Taurus Lagna person born during the day will distinguish himself through his hard Saturnian work, structure, and discipline, and through his own personal philosophical outlook. He can excel toward greatness in a less disruptive way. This is very important. This is what differs the day birth from the night birth. The malefic here is less disruptive because he is more constructive, right? So an example, he's going to be the ninth Lord, so it's got to do with his philosophical outlook on life, his personal philosophy. So the ninth Lord, Saturn, strong during a day birth, will bring capacity to use our outlook on life, our studies, to slowly but surely see life from our own unique perspective to achieve greatness. You know, for a Taurus Lagna, you know, you have to follow what you think is right from your own philosophical point of view. It might take time because it's Saturn, but surely you will get there. And the 10th Lord is the capacity to work on what we need to do to slowly but surely get the results we want to achieve. Okay? So we see here that for a Taurus Lagna birth during the day, you know, both the Trishadaya and the Yoga Karaka are gonna be strong, but the Lagna Lord is gonna be weak. And obviously we're not taking into consideration dignity or other factors which would immensely complicate things here more than they already are.
Yeah, so, I think we should just establish one more thing, that sect is just an additional differentiation or qualification of a particular planet's position in a chart, and we have to consider other major elements such as dignities and even the planetary influences through aspects, etc. But this is just a basic overview, and this is a reiteration of what we said in the introduction session. Yeah,
definitely. So we're going to see that during the day birth for Taurus, and we're going to see this for Libra also. Both the Yoga Karaka and Jupiter are going to be strong. So there's going to be a tug of war between that will lead us to greatness and that will impede us from greatness. Okay? So we've discussed the day birth. Now let's go to the other side of the coin, the night birth. The night birth for Taurus Lagna. Once again, we have the night sect planets and the day sect planets. But this time, Venus, who is the Lagna Lord and a functional malefic, is a more active natural benefic because it's a night birth, right? and Mars a neutral, he's a less disruptive natural malefic, but he doesn't play a role in this analysis because he's neutral, right? And during a night, the day sect planets are going to be more, let's say, less effective, right? Not to say negative. Sorry. Jupiter is a functional malefic, the strongest one still. That's going to be a less active natural benefic. And Saturn, the Yoga Karaka, is going to be a more disruptive natural malefic. And we're going to see that during the night birth, the Trishadaya Lord is less effective, and the Yoga Karaka is going to be more disruptive. So it's going to be an inversion of things, right? While the Lagna Lord is going to be strong in principle. But how is this going to express out? Let's see. So functional maleficence of the 11th Lord Jupiter is going to be weak, as we've just discussed. In theory, a Taurus Lagna person born during a night, during the night will get less random positive opportunities or pleasurable problems from Jupiterian things. The person might also be less willing to follow more Jupiterian goals that detract from greatness. So the elements that detract one from greatness are going to be less in principle, okay? So as 8th Lord Jupiter, we might get bland results from wills, money, from other people, and deep esoteric knowledge. So, you know, the distractions are not going to be that bad from in comparison to a day birth, right? During the day birth, we might get a lot of money from wills. We might get money from other people. During night births, we might not get any money at all. We might get, you know, our parents might be rich, but our brothers got all the will money, right? We might be introduced to gurus in esoteric knowledge, but we might just not pay attention to them. We just might be less predisposed toward these distractions that hinder greatness. In a way, the 11th Lord, you know, we're going to get bland pursuits for goals involving money, spirituality, academics. You know, I mean, they're not going to be that strong in principle. We might not be that interested in achieving money, in achieving, you know, academic titles, academic trophies, spiritual titles, that sort of thing that have to do with the 11th. And we're going to see that it has to do a lot with the 11th. You know, the things that distract us from greatness is not listening to our heart, right? It's listening to what others say is the most important thing you have to do. You have to go to college. You have to become an engineer. You have to get all A's. Or, you know, in this case, this person during the night birth, he's not going to be that pressured to do that. You know, their parents might not be so strong in reassessing, I mean, focusing on these matters during childhood. But these are the things that are going to happen during day birth. They're not going to be, a night birth, I'm sorry. They're not going to be as strong. At the same time, the Lagna Lord, since he's part of the night sect, is going to be strong. So we see the complete opposite from the day birth, obviously. At the same time, during the night birth, the person will be his or her own worst enemy, since Venusian topics inherent to the person will be the Jataka's body, but with time, this can be overcome through Venetian grace, right? The person is still his worst enemy, right? But, I mean, he can overcome this because Venus is strong. So, you know, the possibilities towards greatness are less emphasized, or at least are more disruptive, and the obstacle toward greatness are less active, but the body is in a much better place in principle, right? So 1st and 6th Lord Venus, ability to recuperate from sickness or obstacles that might bring bodily harm or that might impede us from getting what we need. Our partners can also help us overcome these setbacks. This will help towards greatness. The idea that here are the values are inverted, right? We might get bodily harm, we might be our own worst enemy, but since it's a night sect, it's a better dignity for the planet, we can overcome this through Venetian grace. Maybe our partner might help us, instead of the other case during the day where our partner would damage us, right? So it's very simple principle. I guess people are understanding it. Sure. So over here, we move to the last one, which is the most important player, the Yoga Karaka. Yoga Karaka action Saturn is going to be weak because he's a day planet in a night birth. Okay? in principle. Through hard Saturnian work, structure, and discipline that distinguish us through our own personal philosophical outlook, we can excel toward greatness, but in a more disruptive way.
Yeah, the one point that I would like to add here is that due to Saturn's weakness from Sect, these people will really have time management issues. And I've seen this case with 3 or 4 charts while I initially analyzed the concept of Sect in using the Yoga Karaka. And Saturn is the natural significator of time. So
that's why.
So that's even though Saturn is well placed in the chart, these people will somehow feel difficult to manage their time.
Yeah, it's going to be a more disruptive, and not only to oneself but to others.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I don't think this would impede the person from achieving greatness. It's just going to be cumbersome. It's going to be difficult both to himself and to other people around him.
It's just not going to be as easy as Saturn would be placed in a day chart with much flamboyance, but this is going to be more Saturnian in terms of causing a little bit of hurdles or breaks in between. Yeah, but still the greatness will be there, and as we always say, Saturn doesn't deny, it just delays.
Exactly, and Saturn is the best planet to give. You know,
yeah.
If there's a planet that has to do with results, without a doubt, in my mind, is Saturn always.
Yeah. Sure.
You know, he turns slowly, but he grinds finely.
Yeah, it kind of sticks to us for the rest of our life, the transformation.
Definitely. Well, here examples. 9th Lord Saturn, capacity to use our outlook on life, our studies, to slowly but surely see life from our own unique perspective, just like in date birth, to achieve greatness, just like in date birth, but without taking into consideration others. You know, and this is a principle that has to do with malefics and benefics, right? And this is something I always use. Malefics keep the good and give the bad, right? While benefics give the good and keep the bad. So the difference between these more malefic planets from benefic planets is that benefics both can achieve greatness, right? But benefics are going to tend more to help people, are going to tend more to take in consideration other people, other places, while malefics don't care about them. Malefics are more egotistical. They might achieve greatness, but they might step on other people. They might just don't care about other people. And during when a strong Yoga Karaka is a natural malefic and is not in Sect, he might create greatness, but he's probably gonna go over other people. You know, and it can also express in the way you mentioned, time problems. I guess this happens when the Yoga Karaka is in the 10th, or maybe the 7th, more than in the 1st or the 4th, or even in the 5th. Although in the 5th and the 9th might be a combination.
in the night chart, Saturn can bring such issues when it is placed anywhere apart from 6, 8, or 12.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that makes sense. In a day chart, when this issue arises, when Saturn is actually placed in 6, 8, or 12. So maybe again.
But remember, Yoga Karakas to give yoga have to be in Trishadayas or Kendras.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, this would depend on other factors that we're not discussing here. But I think the main idea is that when a Yoga Karaka is a malefic planet and he's not part of the Sect, he's going to be more disruptive in the sense that he's going to go over people. He's going to step on people to achieve greatness.
Yeah, sure.
While in Sect, he might not do that, or would be more constructive, right? He would bring those people into his projects. So,
yeah, basically malefics in their own sect are more constructive. I think that's the actual definition to put.
Yeah, I would say less disruptive, right, and more constructive.
Sure.
While out of Sect would be more disruptive and less constructive.
Exactly.
Although it's constructive in a personal way, maybe, but I don't know. And the 10th Lord, the capacity to work on what we need to do slowly but surely to do to slowly but surely get the results we want to achieve greatness by going over others, right? It's the idea of competition, right? For a Taurus Lagna, I mean, a Saturn being a Yoga Karaka out of Sect, this is going to be a person that's going to work a lot, right? And he's going to work going over other people, right? He's going to be really Saturnine towards other people that might, you know, have problems interpersonally. You know, there are a lot of variables going on here. This is just hypothetical. And the idea is that during a night birth, the Yoga Karaka is going to be less constructive, okay? More disruptive in that sense. So the conclusion for this first Lagna is that for a Taurus Lagna, it is better to be born during the day for more constructive Raj Yogas, as we just mentioned, especially in association with Mercury.
Yes.
Because we have to remember that the more natural benefics associated with the Yoga Karaka that are unblemished, right, the better the Raj Yoga. And if Rahu or Ketu are there, even better, right? Because Rahu and Ketu associated with Raj Yogas and functional benefics that are all of them unblemished are going to have great yogas. Because Rahu or Ketu is going to multiply that during their dashas or antardashas or pratyantardashas or any time period, okay? However, at the same time, during the day, the native will encounter more active blemishes by Jupiter, the strongest of the three Shaddai lords, which is what we mentioned before, who will impede greatness. In addition to this, during the day birth, Lagna Lord Venus will be less active in principle due to Sect. We see here that although day birth is the best one for Saturn, Jupiter is also going to be strong, and Venus is going to be weak. So this, in a way, makes sense when we say that Taurus is his own worst enemy. And the idea that he's gonna, you know, his body probably is gonna have a lot of good constitution due to this. If we combine both aspects of Sect and Yoga Karaka, or, you know, lordship of houses in that sense. And at the same time, you know, the distractions that will impede one from greatness are gonna be strongest. But at the same time, the factors toward greatness are going to be strongest too. So we're going to have a talk of war that we're going to discuss at the end of this video. So let's go now to the second Venus Lagna, which will be Libra. Okay?
Sure.
So we're here with Libra Lagna, more or less the same characters as we're going to see. Libra Lagna, of course, is the second Lagna attributed to Venus, whose Yoga Karaka is also going to be Saturn. So first of all, Lagna Lord is Venus, but this time he's a neutral planet, thank God. However, he rules the 1st and the 8th, and he's part of the ninth sect. What does this entail? You're going to see this with Mars and with Venus Lagnas, that they rule either the 6th and the 8th at the same time they rule the Lagna Lord. Venus here is going to be a wild card, like the 8th always is. So in association with Benefics or Yoga Karaka, perfect. In association with natural malefics, functional malefics, there are gonna be problems, right? In this Lagna, functional malefics are Jupiter, who ruled the 3rd and the 6th, a day sect, Mars, who rules the 2nd and the 7th, a night sect, Maraca to the fullest, without a doubt, and the Sun rules the 11th, who is a day sect lord, and Mars is the night sect, as we said before. Here, the strongest Trisha Shadaya lord is going to be the Sun, but since the Sun is a day sect lord, we're not going to take him into consideration because in Hellenistic astrology, the luminaries are considered more or less neutral in many ways. So we're going to take into consideration the 3rd and the 6th lord, which is Jupiter, who is going to be the strongest Trisha Shadaya lord in this chart, okay? And we're going to be discussing this further on. The functional benefics, as we mentioned, Saturn, Yoga Karaka, the 4th and the 5th, right? 4th, Akendra, 5th, Trikona, day sect planet, Yoga Karaka, and Mercury, once again, is the functional malefic, ruling the impressionable 12th and the fortunate 9th. He's a neutral because of things we've just discussed. And the moon is a neutral, ruling the 10th, which is very interesting since, you know, when the moon rules Akendra and Lagna, is very interesting because, as you know, the moon, if she is a growing or full is a benefic, where if she is dying or new is a malefic. So that kind of changes the way we see Kendras. But in this sense, Parashara says the moon is a neutral, although she rules the 10th, and she is the ninth Sect Lord. So in principle, we can say this from the get-go. In theory, Yoga Karaka Saturn will do better in day births by producing less disruptive Raja Yogas than during night births, where he will produce more disruptive Raja Yogas. However, Lagna Lord Venus is weak during the day, so although Raja Yogas could be enjoyed, there are possibilities of other factors hindering the individual, just like in a Taurus Lagna. However, this is going to be less because Venus does not rule the 6th. Here, she rules the 8th. So this is going to be present, but it's going to be less attenuated than it was during the Taurus Lagna. So let's start with the day birth chart. Here we see more or less the same characters. Jupiter, a functional malefic, the 3rd and the 6th, during a day birth is a more active natural benefic, and Saturn, a Yoga Karaka, is a less disruptive natural malefic. We're getting the same results as in Taurus.
Sure.
Venus, a neutral, is a less active natural benefic. He's going to have a lesser play than in a Taurus Lagna because he doesn't rule the 6th, as we mentioned. And Mars, a functional malefic who is a neutral, will be a more disruptive natural malefic. Okay? So let's start. The same thing we mentioned in the Taurus Lagna, however, the lordships change, so the examples will change a little bit. So in theory, here we see that functional maleficence of Jupiter, 3rd and 6th Lord, is going to be strong. So in theory, in Libra Lagna, person born during the day will get more pleasurable Jupiterian obstacles and or more pleasurable ideas from Jupiterian things. This will detract the person from greatness. Example, Jupiter as 6th Lord during a day birth. Strongly pleasant results from death, obstacles, sickness, such as insurance money, getting money from other people's 6th house issues, finding out things before it's too late, right? This idea is polyvalent in many ways, but the idea that we might get money or wisdom from other people's debts, monies, people who work in banking, for example, investments, people that work in insurance, maybe, people that work with burglars or enemies of the state, so people who these are things that are going to detract a person from greatness. And 3rd Lord, Jupiter, strongly pleasurable results from spiritual pilgrimages, right? Short distance pilgrimages, since it's the 3rd. Jupiterian hobbies like amateur scholarship or church groups or spiritual groups, hobbies and that sort. So we might get a detraction from this. So we see that during a day birth, this is going to be present and it's going to be strong. Lagna Lord status during day births is going to be weak. During a day birth, Lagna Lord Venus will be less active. There will be more probability for hindrances towards the individual's body, but this will depend, of course, in its association with other planets. So we leave that there, but in principle, he is weak. And finally, the strongest player, Yoga Karaka action, Saturn, is going to be strong because he's a day sect planet and it's a day birth. So in theory, a Libra Lagna person born during the day will excel toward greatness in a less disruptive way through a hard Saturnian heart and through a structured and disciplined mind and creativity, because it's the 4th and the 5th. As 4th Lord, capacity to use our values that we learned growing up to achieve greatness, capacity to use our cold emotion to slowly but surely achieve greatness, right?
Persistence.
I'm sorry? Persistence, exactly. And not only persistence, the persistence that our mother taught us, that our home taught us, the hard lessons that we learned, that is going to take us to greatness. And as 5th Lord, the capacity to use our methodical mind and our mature creativity to slowly but surely achieve greatness, right? This might be reading the classics, reading all the instructions, learning old philosophies, slowly but surely constructing creatively what we want to do in our mind. This can, for a Libra Lagna, is a more internal thing that's going to take them into greatness while for a Taurus Lagna will be more external things that are going to take them to greatness. So during the day, we're going to see that, once again, the obstacles towards a greatness is going to be as strong as the tools we're going to have towards greatness. And as Sun being the 11th Lord, which is going to be neutral, we can also say that this is going to be even stronger, right? So we see that for Venus, day births are going to be benefic towards greatness, but for the body, for the person, might represent difficulties, which kind of follows the same logic that we're seeing with the rules for house lordships from Jyotish, okay? So, night birth, and we're almost finished now. We see here the players. Once again, Venus, a neutral. The Venus is a neutral here. What? No, the first, I'm sorry. There we go.
That's a typo, maybe.
That's a big typo. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I confused both. This should be
1-8.
Yeah. I'm
7-12.
Yeah, there we go. That's why I'm doing it here. Sorry. 1 and 8. There we go. Venus, a neutral. Jesus Christ. There we go. There we go. Oh God, I'm sorry, Ashwin. This is not supposed to happen.
Don't worry, brother.
There we go. There we go. Sorry. Okay. Venus, a functional malefic. Look at me. A functional benefic. Well, no. Well, oh God.
It should be LL there.
No, it's right. It's at the end. It's at the end.
Okay.
Venus, a functional benefic 1 and 8, is a more active natural malefic during night births, and Mars, a neutral, is a less disruptive natural malefic. While Jupiter, the 3rd and 6th Lord, is a less active natural benefic, and Saturn is a more disruptive natural malefic. Okay? So we're seeing the same things as in Taurus Lagna. Functional maleficence of 3rd and 6th Lord, Jupiter, is weak. So in theory, a Libra Lagna person born during the night will get less pleasurable Jupiterian obstacles and or less pleasurable ideas from Jupiterian things. This will detract the person from greatness, but not in a strong way. See, the obstacles are there, but they're not going to be strong because Jupiter is a less active natural benefic. So examples: bland results from that obstacle sickness, such as insurance money, getting money from other people, 6th house issues, finding out things before it's too late. So, in the first case of day birth, we get a lot of obstacles because we are making money, we're making Jupiterian things from other people's problems. But here, it's not the same. It's more or less blander results. So it's not going to be as strong a distraction. And as 3rd Lord, bland results from spiritual short pilgrimages, Jupiterian hobbies like amateur scholarship, and church groups or spiritual groups. So you see, during a night birth, these obstacles are not going to be as strong during the day. However, Lagna Lord status Venus is going to be strong. During a night birth, Lagna Lord Venus will be more active. There will be less probability for hindrances towards the individual's body, which makes sense. And finally, the Yoga Karaka Saturn is going to be weak in principle, right? In theory, Libra Lagna person born during the night will excel towards greatness in a more disruptive way through a hard Saturnian heart and through a structured and disciplined mind and creativity. Capacity to use our values that we learn growing up to achieve greatness, capacity to use our cold emotions to slowly but truly achieve greatness. People will get offended by that. It's the idea that this is going to be disruptive. People are going to see like, what are you doing? Why are you like this? Why are you so sad, so melancholy? Why are you so Saturnian? You see, that's going to be more disruptive, right? But a person might achieve greatness. And at the same time, the person might fall into, like you said, time management problems, depression even maybe, but that doesn't mean he's going to be hindered by it to achieve greatness, but it's going to be there. And 5th, Lord Saturn, capacity to use our methodical mind and our mature creativity to slowly but surely achieve greatness. People will get hurt and offended because this is the principle of malefics. So, are we getting the picture, Ashwin, before we end?
Yeah, I think we had given a very critical and a clear theoretical establishment in terms of what we spoke, because we are yet to like kind of get into the next pro level with this, with chart interpretations and stuff, which will be the later part of this series. But still, I think for now, in terms of explaining the basic concepts in terms of integrating Sect and Yoga Karakas and other planets in by functional benefics and malefics point of view, I think we have done a very good job. So hopefully, I'm sure people will kind of appreciate what we're doing and try to test this out by themselves. But,
And I want to tell people that this is highly theoretical. I haven't applied these to chart. I have applied it in principle, more or less, over some charts, but I haven't really gone through the study of it. So this is just me throwing out ideas. Okay, this is not me saying that this is the law, this is how it is. This is just me throwing out schemes and ideas for people to hear, to listen, and maybe to promote people to do their own findings and own studies through this combination of techniques. So let's do the conclusion for Libra Lagna and then the conclusion for Venus Lagnas. For Libra Lagna, it is better to be born during the day for more constructive Raj yogas through Yoga Karaka Saturn, especially in association with Mercury, just like Taurus. Okay, Taurus Lagna. However, at the same time, during the day, the native will encounter more active blemishes by Jupiter, the second strongest of the Trishadaya lords. In addition to this, a day birth Lagna Lord Venus will be less active, so in many ways, detraction from greatness will occur through benefic detractions due to a strong functional malefic Jupiter and less active Lagna Lord Venus. That's a mouthful, but the idea is that the body is weak and the distractions are a lot. Just as with Taurus, Jupiterian ideals will be high, leading the native towards one way, and Saturnian ideas will also be high, leading the native towards the other way. In addition to this, during a day birth, Lagna Lord Venus will be less active, but not as damaged as with Taurus, because Taurus rules the sixth, as we've discussed. We must emphasize that the sun will play a major role in upsetting yogas for this Lagna. However, Sect has no relevance here because he is a Sect Lord. See, and this is a thing that will happen in some Lagnas, where the moon or the sun will play an important role in yogas, in Raj yogas. And here is an example, right? How will the sun behave during a night birth? How will a sun behave during the day birth? This is not clear in my experience in terms of how the luminaries are going to behave. Even there's a little bit of discussion in terms of what happens when it's a night birth, but it's a new moon. I think it was Balance that said that during this case, the sun is taken upon as a Sect Lord. So there are a lot of things that I don't quite understand yet about how luminaries come into Sect and how we can combine it with yoga. So, it's complicated without a doubt. So the overview and the final conclusion for these Venus Lagnas, where Saturn is the Yoga Karaka, is the following. A strong tug of war is present between Jupiterian ideals and Saturnian ideals during day births for both Lagnas. As we've mentioned, the strongest, this is going to happen when both the Trishadaya Lord and the Yoga Karaka are part of the same sect. The things that will lead us to greatness are strong, but the things that will impede that greatness are also strong. So we get that counterbalance. So a person, and it's a Jupiter, so it's going to be like really good distractions in many ways, in principle. So, but these are going to bring distractions, are going to bring problems to the native in terms of achieving what their hearts or greatness calls them into action. So we're going to see that for Venus Lagnas, this is going to be very, very present, especially during day births. During night births, these are going to be weaker. So we can also say that during night births, Raj yogas for Venus Lagnas are going to happen, but maybe they're going to be more disruptive towards other people's, and maybe they might even happen by serendipitous situation since the factors are not that strong. Okay? So, continuing reading, during ninth births, however, this will play out in a lesser way. It makes sense because both planets are weaker. This will be truer for Taurus than for Libra because Jupiterian is the strongest Trishadaya Lord for Taurus Lagna, while in Libra it's the Sun, right? Let me write.
Yeah.
While for Libra is the Sun, right? However, for a Taurus birth, there is more probability of hindrance for the body in a day birth due to its regency of the sixth. And this is very important because, you know, this is something that my teacher told me, which is I found to be kind of truth. It's that when we analyze Raj Yogas, we have to see the Lagna Lord. Because greatness might come, but we might not be able to enjoy it fully. We might not be able to enjoy it without friction. We might be in a difficult place and not know that we're enjoying it. You know, this had to do with all these famous people who are famous artists, politicians, but they're drug addicts. They're alcoholics. You know, I think this is an explanation for that. And being Venus different to the sect of Saturn, we're going to see that. And Jupiter being of the sect of Saturn, we're going to see that the attractions are going to be greater. So probably, you know, for day births, people who don't achieve greatness are going to be well involved into Jupiterian things, and that might also, and Venus being weak in principle might also show some type of debility of the body, especially in Taurus Lagna. Continuing reading. This, however, will not impede greatness, only its full enjoyment of it, as I've just explained. For Libra, it is the same if the Lagna Lord is in conjunct with a Trishadaya Lord, which I mentioned before. When you rule the eighth Lord, you know, it's a wild card. And for a Libra Lagna, if Venus is conjunct, for example, Jupiter, it's gonna be a tricky life. It's gonna be a tricky life if it's conjunct Sun too, because in a way they're both enemies to Venus, or at least, I'm sorry, Jupiter is neutral to Venus, but the Sun is an enemy to Venus. So we're gonna see that it's gonna be a tricky, and if it's a night birth, even worse. So, you know, these are principles that we can use to study charts further on as we go. At the same time, continuing reading, since both Grahas relationships, Saturn and Jupiter, is neutral, this tug of war can be worked out by the Jataka. So in principle, if we take into consideration natural relationships in the planetary schemes, we can conclude that this tug of war can be manageable, especially during ninth births, right? Because Venus is going to be strong, and the Trishadaya Lords and Jupiter specifically and Saturn are going to be weak, right? In terms of Sect.
Yes.
Okay? This means that they're going to be functioning the same way. The thing is that Jupiter is going to be less active and Saturn is going to be more disruptive. So, you know, we might come into the realization during a night birth that, oh my God, I can't do this, because if I do this, I'm gonna be very harmful towards other people. And you say, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And you do it, you achieve greatness, but it goes over other people. You stumble, you step over other people's feelings, other people's lives, and so on, but you achieve greatness, right? But you're strong. During a day birth, however, these are going to be strong. So the issues during a day birth for Libra Lagna is not, you know, the idea of am I going to be disrupted towards other people? Is more the idea of what I want to do. Do I want to go through these Jupiterian things, or do I want to go through these Saturnian things, and how can I bring them together? However, Venus is weak during a day birth. So, you know, there's going to be more probability for greatness, more probability of this tug of war, but the person itself is going to be in a weak place in principle to figure out these things. So we can see that either night or birth, the person is going to have some kind of difficulties, especially because the Lagna Lord is different in sect to these two planets in question. So this is my conclusion for the Venus, Lagna, Taurus, and Libra for the second part of the series. So I don't know if you have questions. If people have questions, just write them down.
Yeah.
I'll try to answer them. And once again, this is completely hypothetical. We're just experimenting here. So I hope you like this, Ashwin, and
Sure.
the people out there too.
Yeah, as it is, I'm also sticking to the theoretical stuff because even though I've done my analysis on various charts, I've done at least 50 to 60 chart analysis, but still, unless and until people go ahead and test themselves and provide feedback, we really cannot quantify it as an actual theory, even though it is hypothetically an actual theory. So we leave it to the viewers, and I'm sure they'll kind of test themselves and get back to us.
And it's interesting because, this first case scenario for this study, we chose Venus lagnas, which are very anomalous, specifically because they rule both the 6th and the 8th at the same time. They're lagna lords, which brings polyvalence to people born under these lagnas in terms of their body and their their constitution, and this has to do with the whole significations that lagna holds. It's not only the body, it's the person per se. So yeah, I mean, I hope you liked it. I hope people liked it, and let's continue doing this.
Yeah, sure. I as usual, I liked it. I'm still in awe of this topic, and it is just the beginning of our exploration of this, and I'm sure we'll get back with much more even after finishing the rising signs that you have prepared. So we'll see, and we'll get back next time. Until then, bye bye.